Origin of Species contains adult themes and violence and is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
911, what's your emergency?
Yes, hello, hi. Hi, I need you to send someone right now.
Sir?
I need help.
Sir,
Yes, what?
I need you to calm down.
Calm down, I'm being attacked.
Can you find a safe space to hide?
No, I can't find any safe spaces. That's the problem. Just hurry,
Sir,
hurry.
what is the nature of your emergency?
It's a podcast. Actually, it's a podcast host. Hello?
Sir, have you tried turning off the podcast?
Well, it's actually a pretty good show. I mean, I don't miss an episode, but the host is mean.
Okay, I don't know what you want me to do.
Oh, you gotta do something. We've tried everything. We've complained to his sponsors. We've supported his enemies. He just won't shut up. He's getting more listeners.
Sir, please try and calm down.
How can I be calm when he threatens every one of us with his mean, nasty words?
Has he threatened you personally?
Well, no, not me personally. But look, are you gonna do something or what? I'm about at the end of my rope
Okay,
here.
sir, this is what I need you to do. I need you to take your phone that you can hear me coming out of and then go take a really long drive because you're wasting stupid. Did you get all that?
That wasn't very nice. I'd like to speak to your manager right now.
Welcome back to Origin of Species, the podcast that delves into the stories and origins behind the words and phrases we use every day. Among other things, we like to get into other topics, one of which is true crime. So this is our true crime episode. This is season 4, episode 116. And as always, my name is Scott. I'm here with my good friend Steve. Today's guest is the one and only Mike Boudet of Sword and Scale. This is a fun one. Let's get to it. Steve, we've done a true crime episode before back in, I guess that was season 2, episode 37.
It was.
In Cold Blood and Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
So anybody listening to this, I think that's a good companion piece to the one we're going to do today.
I think so. And as with all true crime, there's always that balance of finding you want to have enthusiasm, but not sound too excited about some awful, grisly thing that you're discussing.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. It's a fine line, and I think we'll have a good discussion about that. And there's actually a term for that true crime falls into, which is not the most flattering term, but I'm gonna save that. What I want to do is I want to start off talking a little bit about our obsession. When I say our, I mean humanity's obsession with true crime. And then we'll look at some of the criticisms with true crime. We'll look at why are we so fascinated with true crime. And then we will get to our interview with Mike Boudet, who's the creator and host of Sword and Scale, which is my favorite true crime podcast and one of my favorite podcasts, period. So I'm really excited to share that with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I realized that just preparing for this, what I thought was true crime isn't necessarily true crime. Because I was going to say, I really like that Call Her Daddy podcast.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a crime, but not in the way that maybe
it's a crime against. It's a crime against your ears.
Yeah.
If you've ever tried to listen to it. So, but yes, no. I mean, Call Her. Gosh, do they even now? Now you got me thinking about that podcast. I wonder if they even make that anymore. I used to follow the podcast just because the hosts were incredibly hot. Tried to listen once, and somebody should true crime. No, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't say it. Maybe they'll end up in a future episode. I don't think we want to make that. There seems to be a lot of true crime out there. People are not running out of content to discuss.
No, and that's something else we'll talk about. So, Steve, do you consider yourself a true crime guy or not?
I think I'm more of a dabbler. I know there with true crime, it seems to be it's tough to like kind of be into it. So there's some shows I like. I like the show Criminal. I've liked a lot of Wondery podcasts that they've had. They're more kind of mini series that are mysteries. So I think I like more of a good mystery than a crime. But if it's something I've always found is real life is much better than fiction often. So I would say I dabble in true crime, but not probably a massive fan of it.
You know what I just thought about was the staircase. You and I mean, gosh, we
That's
almost had
right.
a offshoot podcast just about the staircase.
We did. And it's
that's-
still, that was like my dinner party conversation icebreaker for a long time, because you could spend hours with that, and I would have articles on my phone. So I guess I do like let's see, that's a mystery, but that's definitely a true crime. There's some grisly, salacious aspects to it.
I think true crime, saying, are you a true crime guy is sort of an unfair question, because I mean, you said you're a dabbler. I mean, there are people that their identity is very much wrapped up with, hey, I'm a true crime junkie, and they will consume any sort of true crime thing, which is why if you turn on some streaming channel, there's like 6 Ted Bundy movies, and you're like, what is going on? Like it is that. But within true crime, there's a lot of variation. I mean, what you're talking about is you like a contained story that has sort of a resolution at the end versus just, and obviously needs to be interesting, because so many times, like you said, I mean, these stories really would get rejected in the writers. If somebody were to write some of these stories, they go, this is preposterous. And that's something that's really exciting when you see something that is true and you go, I just can't believe this is true. That's why true crime, but there's so many different types of true crime, including, I guess, Call Her Daddy as well. There's definitely been some crime that's happened in that podcast, I'm sure. So true crime podcasts really have become one of the top genres of podcasts out there. I mean, I remember when we started our podcast, it was like every other podcast that was starting was true crime. It seemed like, according to a report from October 2020 on a website called Statista.com, true crime podcasts make up 18% of all podcasts out there, just barely trailing comedy and news podcasts, which those were both right around 20%. And if you think about that, that's kind of crazy, because that's beating pop culture, politics, sports, which I guess if you just think about the conversations you have these days, I mean, I would think sports and politics would be more something you'd have more podcasts for. But I got to tell you, and as somebody that's been on the dating scene, we've talked about, pretty much every female you talk to has a favorite true crime podcast. So
that's always surprised me too. The ladies seem to be down with listening to true crime.
When we get to why we like true crime, which I'm going to talk about here in a second.
Sure.
I think maybe we can connect some dots there too. So it's one of the top podcast genres. I personally do really enjoy true crime podcasts, but I'm not so much a fan of the ones that are like, let's sit around and crack beers. And I'm not going to name names, but they happen in a garage or or whatever. And it's just like having beers and talking true crime. I do also like the story aspect of it. Some of my favorite ones have been Serial was fantastic. The only problem with Serial was you talked about wanting a resolution, and like it was fascinating because you didn't know what was going to happen, and you're kind of expecting that the person that you think is going to be the killer is going to be found not to be the killer because of some smoking gun. But spoiler alert, looks like Adnan actually did it. So it's kind of that was kind of a letdown. But S-Town, which was technically, I think, like around season it wasn't season 3 of Serial, but it was made by the same people as
Yeah.
Serial. Up and Vanished was fantastic. But Sword and Scale's always been my favorite one, and you know
Yeah.
that. I've been preaching the
You've been
gospel of that.
You have been preaching for a while, and we talk about a good story. I think everyone will get a chance when they listen to Mike Boudet when we speak to him later. He's got a very good voice, knows how to tell a story, knows how to pace things. Very important direction he gives when he's presenting a story.
Absolutely. They take a lot of care over there to create a good story. So why do we love true crime? I went to an article on Mental Floss, which laid out 12 reasons. I'm not going to go through them all, but just a few of them that I thought really ring true. And sometimes, you read something and it's like, oh yeah, I knew that, but you just articulated it for me. That happened a lot with this. The first one is because evil fascinates us. The true crime genre gives us a glimpse into the minds of people who have committed terrible crimes, taboos, most of the time murder.
Yeah.
And you sort of, as the listener or the reader or however you're consuming it, are making an assessment about, wow, this is what evil is. It sort of defines, it almost calibrates us to evil. And I would say, this is not just going to be one huge plug for Sword and Scale, but that is one of the redeeming things for people. If you think true crime is exploitative, which I get that argument, it really does paint a very stark picture of evil. Whether or not you need to listen to that every day, that's up to you. But we as consumers of this want to figure out, and this is what the Mental Floss article says, what drove these people to this extreme act, what makes them tick, hence all the documentaries and movies, because we are like, we'd never do this. Let's get a little insight into the type of people that do this. And also maybe let's learn how to avoid these types of people.
That's right.
Another one I liked was they called it the 24-hour news cycle. I would just say the media. And you've heard the term, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yep.
25 to 30% of most television news deals with crime, particularly personal crime and murder. And by the way, this article, I think, came out a couple years ago.
Right.
It's more than that now.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, maybe not. I mean, COVID, I guess, but
it's death. It's something to be scared of, something that you want to get information so you can feel like you have some control.
Right. So we see these crimes. It makes us, it sort of feeds into that first thing of like, you hear about these violent crimes. And so we're curious to go, who would do that? What's the story behind it? It's very intriguing. One of them is we can't look away from a train wreck. It helps us feel prepared.
Yeah.
I thought this one was interesting. It says, because there may be an evolutionary benefit, Dr. Marissa Harrison, an associate professor of psychology at Penn State, said she believes people are interested in true crime because we've evolved to pay attention to things that could harm us so that we can better avoid them, which is what I had mentioned before. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I don't, it's the whole, hey, there's a tiger over here, so let's climb the tree. And this is like the new evolutionary way that we're handling that. Feels a little bit like a stretch, but
just a little bit of a reach, but I think there's some truth to it. There's some sort of instinct inside of us to make sure that we protect ourselves and don't die. And maybe it's not the intended way for it to manifest, but maybe it's kind of a perverse way that pops up.
Well, I think that for that to be true, it would have to have some sort of impact on evolving our behavior. And I just thought about this, and maybe it is true. I just listened to, okay, this is turning into an episode of Sword and Scale, but I did just listen to an episode of Sword and Scale that dropped on their Plus feed yesterday. And it was a thing, this comes up a lot, but there's this thing where we want to be polite to people. Right. So let's say you're a teenage girl and there's like an awkward kid who you're sort of repelled by and everyone else is, but you feel like you need to be the nice person.
Right.
That feels like a virtue. Right. And that is how I was brought up and how most people were brought up.
Right.
But in some cases, it feels like maybe that's not the best thing. you could end up getting killed,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying. If you are I think to an extent, obviously that's a good thing. But
Mhm.
when you have your gut and you have these things going off saying like, this person's
Yeah.
dangerous, or this person's not just a little different than everybody else, I need to not always be nice. So maybe there's some evolutionary thing. Once you hear
Yeah.
that and you see so many examples of that, basically maybe it just will make us more mean to the weird people. I think that's what I'm getting
Yeah.
at here.
Well, we spend a lot of time on Twitter, or I do at least. So I think that's, if that's the goal, it's working. Or
yes.
maybe the weird people are being mean back to the normal people. I'm not sure how that works. It's not good really for anyone. And by the way,
No.
you can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Speakcies on both those wonderful brain rotting social media applications.
Yeah. Come make the world a better place and get on
Yeah.
Twitter. Just follow us. And by the way, our Twitter is good because you'll find out
Twitter's
about
awesome.
not only will you find out about our episodes that you may have missed, you'll
Mhm.
also get great New York Post stories. I saw once, I have to keep myself from sending you New York Post stories.
Right.
Oh gosh, the one I just saw today. I mean, they're so ridiculous. You're like, how is
Right.
this news? And I guess maybe it's
not news. It's the New York Post.
Yeah, exactly. I'll send it to you after the show since I can't
Awesome.
remember it. Okay, real quick, a couple more that I thought were
Sure.
good, and then we'll move on. But one of the reasons we like to listen, it notes here, is because we're glad we're not the victim.
Mhm.
Now, I'm sure that's true, and we're glad we're not the perpetrator. Another reason, it gives us an adrenaline rush. We're trying to solve the mystery ourselves. That's one of the reasons we're drawn to this. The final two, though, I thought were probably the ones that made the most sense to me. The first one is
Mhm.
because we like to be scared in a controlled
Mhm.
way. Same
Mhm.
reason we watch horror movies. It says here, as a source of popular culture entertainment, true crime allows us to experience fear and horror in a controlled environment where the threat is exciting but not real.
Mm.
For example, the stories of real life killers are often for adults what monster movies are for our children. There's something in our psyche where we have this need to tell stories about being pursued by monsters. And I don't get scared listening to true crime, but
Right.
I get weirded out and freaked out, which maybe is the
Mhm.
same thing. This is kind of an off the wall question that
Sure.
I'm going to ask you, and I didn't prepare you for this, and you don't have to share. But
Okay.
have you ever been truly scared? Not by a TV show, but like something was about to go down or happening, and you got like a real fear in the
Mhm.
moment. Have you ever had that?
I have, and I'll actually share a true crime moment. It was last summer, and I was walking my dog very early in the morning, and I saw a young man who was covered in tattoos, head to foot. Didn't look like he fit in the neighborhood, and was walking out to his car, what I thought was his car, at a very early time, maybe 6 in the morning, and walked up to me, and I was walking Mindy the dog, and goes, it was odd because he looked like Lil Xan, but he spoke like
Mm.
Beaver Cleaver. He's like, "What type of
That's
dog do you have, mister?"
That's a
And it
bad
was,
combo.
and I was freaked out beyond freaked out. Walked down the street, looked behind me and saw him going into other cars, not very far away from his house. Anyway, ended up calling the police. Found out later, it's one of the reasons I check the Henrico crime reports daily now. They arrested the guy. He had been breaking into cars. He also had a weapon on him at the time I met him, but the moment came and went. But there was a moment that I look back and realized that things could have gone differently if he had a weapon on him, and
Yeah.
I wasn't at the time ready
So
to
you had a
battle.
moment. So in the moment when you saw him, it wasn't like you had one of those fight or flight fear scenarios, but then when you look back, you were like, holy crap. And it was like a fear of what could have been. Yeah. And I remember that
Mhm.
was crazy. Cause you had told me like, hey, there's this guy. And then I'm thinking, he's probably fine. Like Steve, everybody that's tattooed is not robbing your car. And it turns out
Yeah.
he was breaking into cars. So, And I guess it's, when you watch The Staircase, you don't get that same feeling, right? There's not an actual fear,
Yeah.
unless
My
we should
wife's
have a
only
staircase. Go ahead.
only 3 of my wife's previous husbands have died in the same manner, so I'm not too worried about that.
Whatever. She was killed by an owl. Don't you
Mhm.
know the real
owl
the real
theory.
story? The owl theory. We do need to resurrect. I know we're 5 years too late, but and so but I do think that is probably, in my opinion, the number one or number two reason why we love true crime. We do like to get that fear feeling, but in a way that it's not actually going to harm us. And then the last one they list here is because the storytelling is good and it's
Mhm.
comforting, which I thought was interesting, but it's so true. When people were asked, according to Mental Floss, why they love true crime, most of them will mention one thing: storytelling. The article goes on to say, for thousands of years, people have gathered around the fire and said, "Tell me a story." Um, Tony Harris, the host of Scene of the Crime and Hate in America, noted that many true crime shows have a definitive ending. In most of the shows, we button it up. There is something comforting about knowing that by the end of this show, whether it's just one episode or it's a serial, if you will, that there will be an ending. And again, that's one of the reasons I really didn't like Serial, but it's not their fault that it didn't have the wrapped up ending. But that one made a lot of sense to me as well. So lots of reasons we do enjoy true crime. It's on the rise. True crime didn't start with podcasting, though. I used to love to watch Dateline and like 48 Hours Mystery. That was my
Yeah.
And I mean, that to me is really the precursor to these podcasts. Unsolved mysteries, I would say you could put under true crime. Were just so good. But again, true crime goes back much further than that. We talked about In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I think that one, as you spoke to back in episode 37, really was a game changer. The way that it took the reader inside the heads of the criminals, and it's just a really important touchstone in true crime. But true crime goes back even farther. And you have to go all the way back to the Ming Dynasty in the early 1600s in China, of course. Zhang Yingyu's The Book of Swindles came out in 1617 and is a late Ming Dynasty collection of stories about, this is interesting, true cases of fraud. So it wasn't even about murder yet. Let us tell you about...
They kept it classy, though. I could see that. It's still kind of a high culture thing.
Chapter 1, Amway. You know what, though, Steve? You actually just hit on something which is true. It was a high culture thing. It wasn't, and that's a very good transition here. So back then, what happened was there were pamphlets that were put out. And this started, as I said, back in China, but then this started happening in Britain as well in the 16 and 1700s. As literacy increased and there was cheap new printing methods, they started putting out the sensational sort of pamphlets. But these were all still at a point where people without money couldn't afford any of this stuff, or couldn't read.
Right.
So it still was something that the lower classes really didn't have availability to. In 1827, Thomas D. Quincy published the essay On Murder Considered as One of the Fine Arts in Blackwood's magazine, which didn't focus so much on the murder or the murderer, but on how society views crime. So we're starting now in the 1800s to really look into this whole idea of true crime. Starting in 1889, there was a Scottish lawyer, William Roughhead. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Roughhead, I don't know.
No,
wrote and published essays for 6 decades about notable British murder trials he attended. Those essays were collected in a 2000 book called Classic Crimes, and many people regard Roughhead as the dean of the modern true crime genre. So I'm going to, at this point, sort of yada, the next 100 years to in Cold Blood, and then 48 Hours Mystery, and then Sword and Scale. Boom. So been around for a while, and it did kind of go from something that was considered classy and more for the, the elite, or at least not for the low classes.
Right.
But that's changed. Not everyone likes true crime. So there are some criticisms. One is just that it's exploitative. It's gratuitous. And a new term that I had never heard before, but I found when researching this, is that true crime is now considered to be part of something called trash culture. Which, like, I'm not going to name this episode Trash Culture with Mike Boudet of Sword and Scale, because I feel that would be insulting, but
and I'm sure it get us lots of other great guests to speak after they say how we name that episode too.
Yeah, we get them on and say, hey man, love your work, and then Trash Culture, with the head trash culture guy, Mike Boudet of Sword and Scale. But what is trash culture? Well, I'm not going to go deep into there's really no etymology we need to get into.
Right.
It is what it sounds like. It entered common use, according here to Wikipedia, in the 80s to indicate artistic or entertainment expressions considered to be of a low cultural profile, but able to stimulate and attract the audiences. So we all know what we're talking about with trash culture. Jerry Springer. I mean, I know I even say it today. I'll be like, I'm watching trash TV. I just need to turn off my head. So, and so I think there's fair criticism there. And I don't think we're here to decide is true crime, trash culture or not. I just wanted to, for people listening, this is a word and phrase show. I should at least throw out one new term that I learned in this.
And as someone who's going to probably go watch The Love Boat when this is done, I'm not going to throw stones at anyone for trash culture.
Trash.
And I will be watching The Love Boat.
The great thing about The Love Boat, well, I shouldn't say the great thing. And again, I still haven't seen an episode, but I love that it's during that time where, now like every show is meta. There's self-awareness. Would you say that The Love Boat is the opposite of that? It's like, it's in its own. I mean, it is almost like a cruise ship in that it's out on its own sort of thing. And I don't think anyone ever looked around and was like, I don't think they were doing peyote or anything. I just think,
I don't know.
Was
There's
weird
some things listen to our Speakcies Uncut episode 3 about the Mangala, and you might disagree on the peyote. It's definitely, I'd say it's maybe more cheese culture than trash culture, but there's been a few episodes that I certainly not a more intelligent person afterwards, but not going to stop me.
Yeah. I think I don't like the term trash culture. Frankly, I don't think that's, wrapping this up. Oh, by the way, I did want to, just because I can't help myself, I have to share this with you and our listeners.
Please.
I did a Google search of true crime and trash culture. That's what I typed in. On the first page, within the first 5 results, I got the following articles. True Crime's Ethical Dilemma by Vulture. Okay. I didn't click on it because it's from Vulture. True Crime, this is the next one. True Crime is cathartic for women. It's also cop propaganda. And that's from Mother Jones. So I also did not click on that.
Yeah.
And then this one, The Enduring Pernicious Whiteness of True Crime, from a website called The Appeal. So it's on, man. I mean, you can, whatever.
We should do a podcast on things that haven't had racial politics injected into them yet. And
okay, so we'll start with Dr. Seuss.
We'll probably talk with the Love Boat.
It's impossible, Steve. It's impossible. And this is why this is now a recurring theme and really should just be a segment, because every time recently, if you go back and listen to the episodes, I will say, I Googled this and let me just read the first 6 things that come up.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's always something like the enduring pernicious whiteness of true crime.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't even know how to, didn't read the article, so maybe it would have changed my mind.
Yeah.
I just want to end with this in defense of true crime. I did find an article on I wrote on long. I have no idea. Oh, long reads, longreads.com, called True Crime and the Trash Balance. So it talks about how true crime has sort of morphed in the culture. And I do think it has. And let me just give this example, meaning that there was definitely a time where you would, and there are still podcasts and shows that really do just seem gratuitous and completely exploitative. There's no doubt. But I think that a lot more, and frankly, the more successful of the docs and podcasts, actually help in some way. They either help with advocacy for the victim or some other thing. And I'll give you an example. I just listened to a podcast called Your Own Backyard, which was tremendous. And it was about Kristen Smart. Do you know who Kristen Smart is?
The name is familiar, but it's not. Unfortunately, the details aren't coming up to me right now.
Okay. Well, that is the correct answer, because when you start this, because that was my, I was like, Kristen Smart. I was like, I know Elizabeth Smart, and I'm like, maybe that's who I'm thinking of. And that's sort of the reason why this guy did this podcast. Kristen Smart was a student in not USC, but in California. Actually, I'm blanking on the college that was never found as an unsolved case. The cops some would say the cops botched it. And this guy's from that area. He lives right down the street. And he said, I'm going to create a podcast and I'm going to do research. And spoiler alert. So if you don't want to know anything, let me just put it this way. I highly suggest you listen to Your Own Backyard. You'll find out who Kristen Smart was. And there was a huge net positive that came from that. Same with Up and Vanished. I mean, that's been out long enough that I don't mind saying. I mean, I'm saying he solved the case, but the work that he did helped with that. So, and even with Sword and Scale and other podcasts, they do shine a light on cases that are sometimes have gone dormant. So we're going to get into our conversation with Mike Boudet. I did want to give a little bit briefly of context to people that don't have any idea who Mike is or what the show is. We talk in this conversation with him about some of the controversy he's faced. And there was a time a couple of years ago where he got fired or basically had to leave his own show, which was on Wondery. Steve mentioned Wondery. And then he came back because the ratings pretty much tanked. So, but he's found himself in controversies, a lot of which have to do with that. He does say things that are not PC or woke, and he'll say things that some would say are in bad taste or post memes to that effect as well. So you can be, people love him, people hate him. I like the guy. My limited interactions with him have been good, and seems like a great guy. So, but if you want to know more about some of the controversies, we do talk about them here. Feel free to research it yourself. But frankly, there's not much there. People don't like the guy. It just is what it is. So
you would think almost that he hosted a show called Call Her Daddy instead.
Yeah. Well, he's an attractive guy, but he's not going to get the same clicks that those girls get. So with no further ado, we're going to get into our conversation with the host and creator of Sword and Scale, Mike Boudet.
These monsters that lurk and lay beneath my bed.
Our guest today is the president of Incongruity Media and the host of the highly influential and wildly successful Sword and Scale podcast. Sword and Scale is currently in its 8th season, and in my opinion, better than ever. I am a proud sasshole. I don't miss an episode. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott. I didn't know you were a sasshole. That's
Oh yeah, man. And if we were on video, you could see my my Sword and Scale trucker hat that I just got. So I'm a true fan.
Yeah, nice. And I'm covered in blood. I wanted to act like a victim from the latest episode. So we each did our. Yeah, I'm the content for this one.
Nice.
Yeah, one of the things Steve and I were actually just talking about before the show was sometimes the previews for some of these true crime shows are a little too cheery. I think you always strike the right tone. I heard one the other day, and I don't even remember what it was for, and it was like some young lady going, and the two boys found the dismembered body in the ditch. It's like, you shouldn't sound that happy.
Yeah.
But anyway.
No, I sometimes get complaints from people that are like, you're not setting the right tone. Like, they're like, why do you pause between words? And I'm like, well, because that's how you add drama to a audio story. Like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it works. And you have a big following, a loyal following, I would say. Sword and Scale was a show that, if I'm not mistaken, was well ahead of the true crime curve. I mean, you started in what, 2013, 2014?
Yes. 2014 was our first episode, January 1st. So we, like, the idea came before that, but that was the first episode.
What made you decide to start a true crime podcast, as this was ahead of the real true crime boom?
Well, I guess you could call me a grifter. I had done a lot of stuff in the past, and I had played around with different types of podcasts for years before that, about 8 years prior, and tried all sorts of different genres, and had kind of given up on it and left it alone because I couldn't come up with something original. I had done a lot of copying of other things that I liked, and it took me a very, very long time to kind of finally figure it out and nail it down. And before that, I had done a lot of things leading up to podcasting that had led me to this direction, sort of almost accidentally by fate. Like I had dabbled in graphic design and web design and even audio engineering. So all of those traits put together, kind of make you a pretty good podcaster, as long as you have sort of that base level of being able to tell a story and somewhat of a decent voice, I guess.
Yeah. And you're being humble or modest there, but I think that is one of the big draws to the show is the stories are told. I mean, I think I listened to a Plus episode the other day that, you're going through the episode thinking, okay, this is, we know who did this, it's always it's always the husband or whomever you think it is. And then it was a curveball. And I'm going, this is the only podcast where I trust them with the storytelling. I know it's not going to be the obvious thing. And you guys do a great job with that. But then your voice as well. You've got that great voice. And there was a time back in 2019 when you weren't actually hosting. And I have nothing against, Trisha Griffith, but it definitely wasn't the same without you. What was that period like for you with Sword and Scale going on, with you not hosting? I'd be interested to hear how you felt about that. And also the outcry from fans that wanted you back.
Well, it was pretty much exactly what you just said. The fans didn't like it one bit. And, frankly, neither did I. That happened. It was something we had to do. I had to get off of the show, and it was either we stopped putting out shows altogether, which wasn't a possibility because we have a whole staff and they need jobs, and we weren't going to start firing people, or we find a different replacement for me and sort of see how that goes for a while. And we weren't even sure if it was permanent, but the fact of the matter is that all of that didn't need to happen. All of that occurred because of somebody got offended because of an Instagram post that was a joke. That was clearly a joke that to this day nobody disputes as a joke. But because someone's offended, everybody's livelihood has to be either put on hold or go away. So I don't know how far you want to get into that, but it was it wasn't pleasant.
Well, we can go into it a little bit. I mean, I know what the post was, and I remember thinking it was like funny, and it never made sense to me that somebody would want to end your career over a post like that when people are posting things all the time, comedians post things. You're a true crime show.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to talk about violent stuff. This is what, this is the audience for it. And
it was also, I mean, it really was about the particular word that was in the joke. That wasn't even my joke. It was just a repost.
Sure.
We have an Instagram and we post stuff to the Instagram. And if you know what Instagram is, it's, you post pictures and you're either posting horrible, crime scene dismemberment photos, which really isn't sort of the style we wanted to go with. We didn't want to go that way. We've tried that, but we didn't want to really make the entire Instagram account about that. You could post pictures of the host being all cutesy like Crime Junkie does and taking glamour shots. Or you could, post dank memes of murder. And so we posted a meme and it had a particular word in it that starts with a C and it's a 4-letter word. And it's sort of the crowd of outrage, those that are easily outraged just with blue hair and their own pronouns came after us in a big way and decided to, rally on Twitter to get us kicked off of our network, which was Wondery at the time. That led to us having to replace me as the host. And, the reason we had to replace me is because of the pressure that they put on the advertisers and the network that, they were basically calling the Wondery and they were saying, is this the kind of thing you support? And that whole outrage thing and basically threatening employees of Wondery and making them feel unsafe and going after advertisers and trying to tell them that I was some sort of misogynist and a racist and, throwing all the ists. And that's sort of been a recurring theme throughout my career as a podcaster. The people just seem to gravitate towards me because I don't do what they want me to do.
And we can empathize with you, Mike, just to let you know, and this is actually true, that we were banned on Instagram today. We're in some sort of Instagram limbo, which was not, we did not know we were speaking to you today, but I'm finding a way. And it was also, it might've been the same word. I'm pretty sure it's because I've been speaking out against kale. And I think that's what's happened to us, but you've inspired us. We're not going to give up.
That's not the word.
Oh, okay. Well, Scott can tell me later, but I think that we've experienced on a very small scale what you've had to go through.
Kale doesn't start with a C, by the way, but okay.
Yeah, we have a
kind
word
of
in
"k" sound, but tomato.
Yeah, it's kind of a badge of honor to get. We don't know what happened really. I think maybe there was a hashtag used, but we're gonna listen, man. We want to be in the cancel crew. It's kind of a badge of honor at this point, honestly.
I mean, who's not going to be canceled like 10 years from now?
I know. Well, I mentioned we do a show about words and phrases and the history of language and things like that, and we did an episode on cancel culture. And it all started, you change the words around. It used to be it was call out culture. I remember in the 90s when it first started where it was like certain words you couldn't say and people would sort of look around when you said it. And like they had to raise their hand and say something or, hey, you shouldn't use that word. You shouldn't do that. There's this power that comes with that. And now it's full blown cancel culture. And you've got things like I think the meme you posted, obviously you said, oh, people were offended. Nobody was, maybe one or two people were offended. You were on the wrong side for some reason. And I wonder if it started, there was some controversy about something to do with mental health and maybe I've listened to every episode and I never picked up anything like you're being insensitive or painting people with mental health issues as murderers or something. It just so happens that, a lot of people that are out on, killing people with hammers may have some mental problems. Do you think that's where it started? Or, because people couldn't have been that upset about the dank meme.
I do. I think, but that was years prior. It was sort of like the first inkling that the people that listen to us are the majority of them are female, first of all,
Mhm.
75% plus female, mostly, I think the percentage of liberals in that group is even higher. And there's obviously all the woke culture is within that. So the whole, like, you can't say these things, you can, or if you say, if you talk about this topic, you have to say it in this way, and you have to say these sort of disclaimers. First of all, that all started years ago. I mean, it was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was like within the second season of our show starting, it was 2015 maybe, and then it escalated in 2016, and then in 2017 it was really blowing up. But it really started with people saying things like, you talk about people that have that hear voices in their head, that are paranoid schizophrenic, and they're these people are sick, and you shouldn't portray them in a certain way because it stigmatizes mental illness. I'm like, well, I do a crime show. I do a murder show. I do a show about murders. I just tell the story about what actually happened. I don't make it up. I'm not giving you sort of fictional Hollywood movie about some crazy murderer that's going around killing people like a serial killer.
Mhm.
I'm telling you factual information about something that happened. And then basically telling you in a certain, in the way that like a friend would tell you a story, like in the way that somebody that casually would tell you the story, as just another human being that isn't trying to check all the boxes of PC culture to make sure that everyone's okay with what they're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's the fun in that? And is it really going to be a good show if you like? I don't want to listen to a show where I don't think the host and the creators are, covering something in the way they want to, but they're modifying their speech, or they're modifying the way they cover it because they're scared. I mean, I mean, you're really about the only true crime podcast I listen to, because I know it's become more and more clear, especially recently, that you're just like, no, I'm going to do my thing, and people don't like it. Then
Well,
they don't like you.
I think you're absolutely right about what you said earlier about the cancel culture, the term cancel culture sort of coming into existence, but it's also trying to be reinvented now and rebranded by the same people that are for it. And I've never understood who in their right mind would be all about that culture at all. But it's scary how it's sort of taken root and infected all of modern society. I think there was a post on Twitter yesterday or the day before by LeVar Burton, who played Geordi LaForge in Star Trek. That he was like, he's trying to, he was basically trying to say cancel culture doesn't exist. It wasn't call out culture. I think, I forget the term he used, but it was like, taking responsibility for your actions culture, or something along those lines.
Oh, accountability culture. Probably.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're trying to rebrand it as accountability culture when it's really just a bunch of blue-haired feminists that are getting angry at words because they feel like they have to.
Yes.
We did an episode, the latest episode we did, that we just put out on the regular feed. And what we do, I don't know if you know, but we have, well, I'm sure you know, because you're a sasshole, but we have our Plus membership, which if you sign up for that, it's like starts at $5 a month and you get shows early. And then a week later, we put it out on the regular feed. And when we put it out on Plus, you'll get like maybe one person will be like, I didn't like that thing that you said, that the one, but they're always reasonable and they always like leave a comment and they're respectful and stuff. And then that like a week later, that one comment is going to turn into like 100 from like everybody that just listens for free and it just wants to be offended.
Right.
So it happens all the time. And it just literally happened this past week because we did a story about a young man who was charged with murder, the murder of his parents. And it's not really certain if he did it or not, but the whole reason he was a large part of the reason why he was convicted, and this was in Texas, is because he was keeping this lifestyle, this gay lifestyle, hidden from his parents,
Right.
And everyone around him. And there's a part in the story where I go, "Did you hear a lisp? I heard a lisp."
I remember that. Yep. I was like, he's going to be in trouble for that. But I thought it was hilarious. I knew exactly where you were going with it. And I was like,
no, but everybody's tripping over themselves to basically school me that just because you have a lisp doesn't mean you're gay, and it's a bad thing to say. How dare you say that? And I'm like, look, I grew up around, like I grew up in a family where we had, young boys in our family, and we were like, he's got a little bit of a lisp. Do you think he's maybe? And there's nothing bad about it. No, it's just like it's not like you're not. Oh, now let's throw him out of the family. I didn't say that. I said, like maybe he's not, completely heterosexual.
Yeah, but if you listen to that whole episode, which of course I did, you made very clear. I mean, actually, I don't want to. Well, I can spoil it a little bit. I mean, you guys,
someone gets murdered in the episode.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Unlike most Sword and Scale episodes. No, but I mean, the point I'm trying to get to is, yes, that was funny, and I remember at the time going, I loved it. I love the fact that he made that joke. He will get some shit for it, but then if you listen to the whole episode, I mean, you handle that whole thing well. You show that he got convicted in part, and the punishment he got because people thought he was a liar because he was was lying about his sexuality. But I think you made it really clear in the episode. It's like, hey, there's a coming out process that happens, and this was wrong the way. And that's one thing you do on a lot of shows is you try to take every angle on it, and it's so clear, which is why it's so ironic that you then get hammered for coming at it from a certain perspective, which if anybody actually listens, they'll see that's not the case.
Well, it gets into the whole difference between legitimately being offended by something and, as Mike knows, people out there looking to be offended.
Yeah, and that's
their goal in the morning is to be offended.
That's what I was going to say. The whole point there is the end of the episode. I'm basically saying, look, this guy probably should get another trial because there's all these other reasons too. But one of the reasons is the jury in Texas was pretty clearly homophobic, and that's grounds for a mistrial right there. And that gets ignored because you said the wrong word, or you said the thing the wrong way earlier on. And you're right. It's basically just it's a gotcha. It's trying to find a gotcha moment that you can express how woke you are on social media about, and that's sort of I think the basis of all of these ills is social media. The certain people that should just shut up no longer have the need to but before there was no outlet. Now they just feel the need to express their mind all the time, even though they don't really even think for themselves. For the most part, they just kind of repeat the same things they've been indoctrinated with from other people.
Yes.
And it's just this perpetual sort of like waterfall of nonsense.
We're all individuals. Yes. We're all individuals.
Do you find it hard? Like, did you have a hump you had to get over?
That's Monty Python, right?
Thank you. Yeah. I don't think Scott thought Steve's finally lost it on air. He picked a good day to do it too.
No, I thought you came up with it and it was pretty funny, but I'm way too young to get Monty Python stuff. I'm just joking, but I was curious though, Steve. I mean, Mike, did you have to like get over a hump where you were like, fuck it, I don't care anymore. I'm going to say whatever I want to say. Was there a point where you were ever kind of reining it in? It seems like recently you've been more like, you know what, whatever. After the thing with Cast, where you just said, look, I'm going to put it out there how I feel. I mean, you're doing Adnan did it stickers, which unfortunately I didn't get one with my hat. I was hoping I would get one, but
we'll send you one. We'll send you a few. Yeah.
I ordered the hat right before you guys got those, I think. But anyway, this is a lengthy question. It probably isn't making too much sense. I'm just wondering, like, has anything changed recently where you're just like saying, really, truly, fuck it? Or has it always, you've always been in that boat? Or did something happen?
Well, I've always had that base mentality of like fuck it as like a baseline. But you know, I worked very, very, very hard to get to this point. Like, it wasn't just Sword and Scale. Like I said, there was lots of trial and error for many, many, many years before that, and lots of work leading up to the skill set that made this possible. But when I started Sword and Scale, I worked my tail off for 2 years. It was about 2.5 years where I put the show out completely for free, no monetization whatsoever. It's not like today where, you know, the first thing you do when you start a podcast is start a Patreon. There was no such thing. And the fear of having that taken away from you at any moment because of something you said was something that like an underlying, like cause of anxiety for years. Sure. And then every time somebody, you know, every time you see one of these things start to snowball where you didn't say it the right way, and then you maybe you acted like a human being instead of one of those freaking robots they have at Epcot, and you responded to someone in a way that maybe they didn't like, and now they got that too to attack you with. Oh, not only did he say the wrong words, but look at him, he's such a bad person because he said this thing to this guy,
right? And
so it turns into this whole it's weird how it's happened, and I wish I had the ability to break it all down into how the snowball effect occurs, but it seems to be almost it's too orchestrated to be just a coincidence or randomness. It seems to be almost like a pattern. It seems to be something maybe they're teaching in universities that I don't know about. But it's this sort of way to go after someone and bring them down. And if you have someone that maybe isn't as skilled with social media savvy, such as myself, that sort of responds as a human being, that could spiral into a much bigger problem. So
yeah.
Mike, I have a related I'm sorry, Scott, were you going to ask something?
No, go ahead.
So I think you're pretty uniquely qualified to answer this. So we are anti-cancel culture on our show. And one of the many reasons is just the low threshold for taking away, it seems to take away someone's livelihood. Not just saying you disagree with them, but like, you know, going after someone's job and ending their career. I'd like your take, you know, what is there a line? What is your line of like when something happens, what would have to happen for you to say, you know what, this person, you know, this is a line that's been crossed. This person should not have a business, or, you know, this is worthwhile me contacting their sponsors. Is there something in your mind? Is there a line that cancel culture makes sense?
Yes. If they commit a horrible crime and are convicted. But Scott, I don't think I finished answering your question though. Because you asked if something had changed.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, Steve. I'll get back to that on a second. Let me just I'm still thinking about it, because my brain lately is.
It's okay. I'll be on Twitter getting a mob. So take your time.
You asked me, Scott. So you asked me if something has changed, and something has changed. I'm freaking rich. I'm freaking rich. I don't give a shit anymore.
Hell yeah.
I don't need to do this anymore. I literally could quit tomorrow. And never work a day in my life again, and never worry about money ever again, or anything ever again. The thing about it is, I still do enjoy it. Not only do I still enjoy it, but I have 9 employees that sort of, you know, need to pay their mortgages and do something with their lives, and so we're going to keep going, because I'm not going to I'm not going to bow down to someone just because they don't like what I said. I've never done it, and I've proven again and again that even when things are on the line, I won't do it. And now that it doesn't really matter anymore,
Right.
I'm certainly not going to do it. And so now, I remember when Wondery kicked me off their network, and I was talking to the CEO, and he was basically firing me on the phone. And he was basically saying, like, look, I know this sucks, but I think the best thing to do is to get off social media. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be more. There's nothing stopping me now. Like if you've taken away, if you've done the one thing to you've reached the end of the game here, and you've taken the one thing that prevents me from going full bore. What's to stop me now from doing all kinds of stuff? Like, you're not gonna,
right.
You're not now. See, that's the thing that these people don't even think about. They're like, well, I'll take away his job, and then he'll disappear into obscurity and never appear again. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. So,
well, and it's like Adam Carolla talks about his pirate ship. I mean, you've got a pirate ship, right? I mean, you can do what you want. Plus subscriptions, I mean, they have to have gone up.
Yeah,
recently, right?
We're almost at 35,000 now, and I looked on lately. I looked on Graphtreon, which is like a Patreon analytics platform, and you could see sort of like the top creators. I think we would now, if we were still on Patreon, we'd be like the number 4, and wow, very close to the number 3, which used to be the number 1 when we were on there. So I don't know where we would land really, but I don't know. I mean, obviously changing platforms does create some churn there, and some people drop off and never rejoin. And some people have dropped off since then because they're like, well, I don't want to use their terms, but
yeah. Don't. But no, I think that I remember, I will tell you something that I wasn't sure if I was going to tell you this or not, but you've heard it all. I preached the gospel about Sword and Scale. I've told so many people, because I first heard about it. I think when you were on Adam Carolla's show, and I said, man, that sounds cool. And I went and I listened to every episode, and I was hooked. And I've told a lot of people about it. And I remember a couple years ago telling a young lady that I know likes true crime, and she's like, I don't know, I heard the host is kind of a dick or something. And I was like, really? I said, are you kidding me? So I said, what happened? She had no idea. She had no like,
she just heard from someone else
she heard from someone else. So I looked.
Oh, that guy's a dick. Oh, that guy's a dick. Oh, that guy's and then it just like telephone all the way down.
And I remember I looked, I actually like tried to research, and I was finding, and some people were throwing up like some half-ass screenshots that I kind of thought were funny. And I was like, what? This guy didn't do anything. I was pissed. And then when the Wondery thing happened, I was just like, wow, screw Wondery over. If that's how they're going to be, I mean, come on. The only reason I even know about Wondery is Sword and Scale in the first place. So I got pissed about that, but I do think it's a larger thing that happens where I've had times where I go, yeah, I'm going to go down to this record store, and they go, oh, well, the owner is a transphobe. I'm like, what? I just want to go like that literally has been said to me. It's this weird thing where it's like, let's find, and maybe he is or isn't or whatever, but
what does that have to do with buying a record?
Yeah. I like Chick-fil-A sandwiches. I mean, I don't care about the CEO's stance on whatever. But anyway,
we even look past the fact that they sell kale. I mean, we're that open-minded.
In case you didn't notice, Steve doesn't like kale. But yes,
who does really?
Hey, oh no, I like kale.
You like to say you like kale.
Oh, Steve is loving this. No, Steve likes to say he hates kale more than I say I like. I'm in the. It's almost like one of those things where people hate Trump so much that you find yourself defending Trump, even though you're not necessarily a Trump guy. But you're like, well, hold on now, he's not literally Hitler. Yeah. Like, and now I'm the guy that that's defending Trump. But anyway, so do you feel like you're almost post cancelable now? I mean, you really, like you said, you almost can't be canceled. I don't even know if we should, because you've got the goods, you're able to do what you've done. You worked on it really hard and you've got the following. It's almost like you don't even have to worry about it anymore. You're beyond it, I would think.
Look, if you have a network that you rely on for 100% of your revenue, and your podcast is your business, and you have revenue, and you rely on that revenue to pay your bills and pay your employees and all that stuff, and if your only source of revenue is that advertising, and that's 100% of your revenue, then that goes away. You're gone. But we realized that very early on. And the first time they came after us, we were on Patreon, and we very, very easily realized that they could go after Patreon, because they did. They went after Patreon, and they tried to get us kicked off of Patreon. The only reason we knew about it wasn't because we got a call from Patreon. It was because we saw an article on some, one of these leftist rags that was like, Patreon decides to keep Sword and Scale. And it was almost like shaming Patreon for keeping us, even though I had no inkling whatsoever that there was even a discussion of us getting kicked off. But but I found out through that article, and the minute I found out, I was like, we got to get the hell off of Patreon. And then they started shortly after canceling right wing, not even right wing necessarily pundits, but like I think Sam Harris left in protest because he didn't like the fact that they were canceling certain people. They canceled Sargon of Akkad. That was the first one for basically defending. He was basically making the argument against a bunch of white supremacists. He was arguing against a bunch of white supremacists, and he used the N-word against them. And that's why he got, and it wasn't on Patreon. It was on a YouTube video a YouTube live stream that he had done a year prior to that. So it was off platform. It was in the past, and it was on a different, it was the context didn't matter. And so those three things, I was like, well, if that's their standard for kicking people off, and Patreon, unlike some of these social media platforms, which at least are sort of like, okay, like a YouTube is sort of a central square, and you go there and you put up a video or you do a live stream and people can join it. And there's the square part of it. There's the central square part of it. Patreon is literally just a middleman.
Right.
It's literally just bring all of your supporters to this platform and use it as a middleman to get paid from them directly. Yeah. So it's not like they're providing any sort of benefit other than just a transactional,
a conduit for
just ease of transactions, and it's basically like what right do these people have to basically separate a creator from their fans, no matter what they say? And so we decided to get off of there, and we started our own platform, because we did absolutely need to have that insurance policy. And yes, I do think that at this point, I mean, it's not cancel proof. I could literally go on social media. I could go crazy and go on Twitter today and say a bunch of things, and probably have MasterCard and Visa, cut ties with us, which would basically put us out of business.
Right. Well, that goes to Steve's kind of question. Whereas it's like, look, yes, I mean, they're taking the term cancel culture or whatever out of it. I mean, yeah, there are things you can do to, I don't know how many records Bill Cosby's selling these days. I mean, there are things you can do that really should get you canceled.
I'm sure he sold a lot once he got arrested, by the way. Just the collector's item, fact, that whole portion of it, the people that just want it just because it's, there's people that collect Nazi memorabilia. I don't think it's necessarily because they're Nazis. They just think it's cool and it's rare and it's something that they, that nobody else has.
Well, one of my favorite people, I think Steve as well, is Jordan Peterson as
He has a
well.
very large collection of communist propaganda,
He
which I think
does.
is good to keep people from forgetting
Mhm.
what's not too far away. Of we're not that many years away from communism, and when it was taking over the world, and seeing the similarities between the way things are promoted now and then. He's done a great job of keeping that memory out there of
See,
just
but that's just sort of like what a historian, professor would do. He would gather things from Stalin and things from Hitler and all those different and just have stuff like that randomly displayed. But then you have somebody from woke culture come in and go and oh, you have Hitler stuff, you must be a Nazi.
Right.
And
Well, no, it's like you're only a Nazi sympathizer if it's like, remember there were like all those movies in like the 90s where at the very end the guy would it'd be like the what is it, the banker's box or whatever in the safety deposit, and they'd open it up and it would be like swastikas in there or something. That's what real Nazis do. They hide it in the safety deposit box. Man, if you got them up in your house, it's a little too on the nose, I think.
that's like the plot of that HBO series, the comic books. God, I can't remember the name now.
Watchmen.
The Watchmen, yeah, where they go into the guy's closet and he's got the
Right.
the robe.
Yes. Oh, that's right. It was Don Johnson, and I'm down for any Don Johnson vehicle. It wasn't Don. Not to get off too much of a tangent. I think it was it Django Unchained where Don Johnson showed up on the plantation. I mean, we need to start asking more questions about Don Johnson in retrospect. maybe he is hiding in plain sight.
There you go.
We'll start the #cancel. Steve, you'll know what was his name in Miami Vice? I can't remember.
Tubbs and Crockett. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Cancel Crockett. But
okay, let's leave Don Johnson out of this. He's done enough for our country. He
wore the white suit. He wore the white suit back in the Miami Vice days.
He sure did, man.
And he pulled it off.
Yeah.
It's very close to a hood.
He might have pulled it off too well. I didn't even think. You guys have ruined that for me now too. Thanks.
Sorry. You can go back to watching Love Boat. Steve's a big Love Boat guy.
Oh, Gopher. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess your point is well taken. And I think as far as you have cultivated over time, kind of seeing this coming down that, hey, look, if I don't remember the guy's name can get kicked off of Patreon, who doesn't even like have any business editing who can or can't use their site. But if this guy's going to get kicked off for using the N-word in a certain context, and then the stuff that happens on YouTube, you get like Prager University gets kicked off for some ridiculous reason. People get demonetized all the time. Say, okay, we're going to have another conduit, to use that word. And it's a really good app. So if anybody's listening to this and has been on the fence, if you're a Sword and Scale fan, I definitely recommend Plus, because and I tell Steve all the time, I'm like, hey, if we ever get big enough, like we need to try to model stuff after this, because you do a good job with, let's like Perks come out. And more than anything else, I think the most important thing is just good quality content. Like you get so much more content on Plus. I don't know what I would do without it, because I'm always like, I need the next episode. Like I already listened to yesterday's Plus episode. So anyway, it's really, I mean, not everybody can do that, but it's like if you don't have the goods or the skill set to be able to cultivate your own audience and come up with something like you have, it probably wasn't going to last anyway.
Yeah, and you have to have the patience to do it too. It's like I said, 2.5 years, no revenue whatsoever, hard work every day for 2.5 years. Like I would have a regular job, 40 hours a week, and come home and then spend the majority of my waking free time just researching and recording and editing and all that for 2.5 years. And that was before a penny. And then as soon as you monetize that, that's when people start to get, they start to get a little angry, and they start to be like, how dare you make a living off of this thing that you love?
Right.
And that's also when they start to get very demanding about what you can do. Even if they're not really paying you anything. They could just,
Yeah, that's always been the weird thing about people that are complaining about what a podcaster says. It's like, well, you don't have to listen, and it's free. I mean,
Yeah.
you can sign up for Plus, but it's free.
but they always feel the need to tell you why they're leaving. They always feel the need to send you either a direct message or post on social media, or even send you a personal email just to let you know why they're no longer listening to your show and unsubscribing because you're such a bad man. So I love that. It's just like there's such a lack of self-awareness there where it's just like, okay, all right, go.
Yeah. I know. It's like just don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Exactly.
I have a broader podcasting question. Do you think now that Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen have moved into the podcasting space, it's time to say no more podcasts? Have we jumped the shark?
Oh man, there's so many of them. What's her name? The one that the magazine. Oh, I can't. I'm having a bad memory day today. Gwyneth Paltrow, didn't she have a podcast too?
I'm sure she did, right?
With John Cougar Mellencamp.
Oh God, it's so bad.
Well, I remember when Conan O'Brien got a podcast, or I'm trying to remember which one it was. It might have been the Conan one or the Will Ferrell one, where a lot of
podcasts.
Yeah, people were like, "Come on, man! Like, really? You gotta start doing a podcast." But now it's like, I'm sorry, who wants to listen to Barack and the boss talk about whatever they're talking about? I don't know. Maybe they really are renegades and it's thrilling, but it does feel like we've kind of moved past, in some ways, the golden age of. Well,
it's
podcasts.
funny. It's funny because there was a long time there. There's several years when I started, and I started late. Adam Carolla started 10 years prior?
Yeah, it was like 08 or 09, something like that.
Oh, even more. So yeah.
No, that might be
wrong.
It was a long time ago.
I think it was actually, was it 08? I thought it was earlier than that. I thought it was like 05 or 04.
Yeah.
Anyway, wait, I forgot what I was going to say.
Damn, no, I forgot too. What were we talking about? You were saying it took a long time to get. The golden age of podcasting, and you said you felt like you might have even gotten started late compared to some of these guys.
Damn, man, I'm having a bad day here today with my memory. No, I forgot. It's gone.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But the point is, though, I mean, you did have Mark Maron and Adam Carolla and these guys that, like, when you thought about podcasts, you'd get those three podcasts or whatever. And then there were a bunch of great shows that came out. Now, like it. Oh,
I remember.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm just vamping. I knew you'd get there.
So for a long time, there was several years where I was doing it and people were just laughing at podcasts. They were laughing at podcasts and podcasters. In fact, I remember we started the first back in 2014 and in January, and then 9 months later is when Serial came out.
Yep.
And Serial, despite what you think of the content, it revolutionized the entire industry because it was suddenly something that people were talking about that had never heard of podcasts before. And they were telling other people that had never heard of podcasts before to listen to and showing them how to listen to it. And it sort of turned podcasting into a real industry overnight and took everyone along for the ride with them. And so all of a sudden you had Saturday Night Live, doing a skit about Serial. And
what was it? The monkey, whatever the ads were that they would always do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not just that, but all kinds of pop culture jumped on the bandwagon once that started. And like Family Guy doing little jokes about podcasting. They've done so many of them now. And it's just, but it turned from a big joke into, hey, these guys are making a lot of money over here. We got to get into this. This is major Hollywood talking, like basically all the people that were laughing at it to begin with were like, hey, maybe there's something to this. Maybe we can make a little bit of money on this. There seems to be a lot of, a lot of stuff going on here. And once they're making $30 billion in revenue a year, $34 billion in revenue a year. And it's just like, we're a real thing. You got to pay attention now. So,
right. Yeah. And Yeah, and so the bar is so low to do a podcast that it kind of seems like a joke. And I mean, I think when Corolla started his, he'd just gotten fired from, he had taken over like Howard Stern's gig on or something on the West Coast, got fired and was like, let me do this. And everybody laughed, but he kind of had this feeling that like, look, I'm funny. People want to listen to me. It might take some time, but we'll build an audience. But then recently it's been more the corporate people kind of coming in, building on what's already in place.
And Corolla, I mean, that man works harder than most people work that have to work for a living. Like, he comes in and does this show. I don't know if is it 4 or 5 days a week, and
5 days a week,
5 days a week, every week. And he's done it consistently forever. 10 years before. Yeah.
He's got like 9 podcasts though too. Cause he does his one with Dr. Drew that comes out a couple times a week. He does the one with Garagos, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's, and then
he makes movies. He does like his, he appears on documentary. Right. He does all this other stuff. He still does TV, a lot of other things. That man works harder than ever. And he makes ridiculous amounts of money, by the way. Yeah. I've been to his studios, plural, and seen his insanely sick, retro fancy, Ferraris and
that's right,
all this stuff. He's got these amazing cars all over the place, in these huge warehouses where part of the warehouse is a garage and the other part's a studio.
It's crazy, man. Yeah.
And he's doing just fine, but it's that kind of ethic where it's like he loves what he does and he works hard because that's what he feels like he wants to do or needs to do. There should be more of that, but nowadays it's all just, hey, give me my COVID check and let me play video games and bitch about everything in the world.
Yeah. Matter of fact, now that you say that, you've done a lot of shows where, gosh, you got some real hateable people that have, the kids that are living at home with their mom and dad, they're paying all their bills. These are always the guys that end up killing people as well.
So what you're saying is Redditors?
Exactly. Or anything that ends with Chan. I don't know.
Exactly.
I'd stay away from that stuff. But hey, you've been very generous with your time. Just one or two quick questions, and don't want to keep you too long. I was actually curious about this. Like, I've listened. There have been a few of your shows that have kind of messed me up a little bit, and I'm sure you hear that all the time. Like that really you can't get out of your head. I mean, you mentioned before, I was thinking about this with you, where I kind of had a feeling that, before you started Sword and Scale, you did try a few things and you sort of landed on this formula, which really kind of broke the mold. But did you realize getting into it that you were going to be spending so much time for so many years having to, research and look into and talk about just really horrific things? And does that take a toll on you at all, or are you just kind of numb to it?
I didn't think this through at all.
You're like, dang, why didn't I start something about like Swedish bikini models or something?
Yeah, no, I had no idea. No, I obviously had no idea that this would just explode the way that it did. And the life and lifestyle that I have now because of it is something I could have never even imagined. But yeah, there is that one detail about what you're covering. Horrible murders. Look, I've sort of set up this, like you said, it's more than just setting up a pirate ship. I set this thing up to make it as palatable and easy for me as possible, because I'm all about working smarter, not harder. And so, like I said, we've hired a very, very talented team of producers and writers, and we've structured the workflow in such a way where I don't have to do all that much to keep the show going and keep the quality and consistency going. And the little bit I do doesn't necessarily, it's not a big surprise to me that people are shit. And that horrible things happen in the world. I mean, the last year has been more traumatizing than of lockdowns, and COVID and all that nonsense has been more traumatizing than anything I've ever covered on the show. But that's not to say it's not like I'm trying to complain about that. There's a lot of people that have a way worse situation.
You can always say that, but tell me what you mean. Tell me what you mean by that, though. How this last year has been more so hard than dealing with murder stories. It's been
a very frustrating, difficult year to deal with for a whole number of things. The lockdowns and the social distancing and all that. There's no doubt that it takes a toll on human psyche. We've seen it in many different situations in many places. People just losing their shit because they're sick of being told what to do and constantly being sort of forced into this these sort of set of rules which keep changing and aren't consistent and don't really align necessarily with actual scientific data. And they're first they're told don't wear a mask, and then they're told, oh no, you do have to wear a mask, and now you have to stay 6 feet away. No, it's 4 feet away if you're younger. No, you have to wear 2 masks, or no, you don't have to wear masks if you're outside and in a small group. No, you can't see your family for Thanksgiving or Christmas. But if you already live with someone, that's okay. And like, so all these different things that just don't sort of add up to any reasonable person could think that are actually based on any scientific fact. And then you see this sort of being politicized throughout a presidential campaign and repeated over and over. And you see the different sort of shaming that each side is doing on the other. And it just there's a certain point where you just start to really distrust everything everyone's telling you, not only in the media, but in the government. And you start to wonder what the end goal of this whole thing is. We're here a year later. We don't even know where this came from, right? We don't even have any information about where this supposedly actually came from. Yeah. A wet market? I don't think so. Yeah. Is that Wuhan lab? Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody cares. Nobody seems to be talking about that. And it's sort of like now we're talking about doing additional vaccine boosters, and then this may go on forever. We're talking about vaccine passports, and you can't travel. You can't go to different places. Look, I worked really hard to get to where I am to be successful so that I could go travel and see the world and have fun and, eat exotic foods and see exotic places. And I've been stuck in a house like a 16-channer playing video games and eating, prepackaged food for about a year. So it wears on you. And like I said, and it's not like I'm trying to complain about my situation. I have it way better than everybody else, but this has been hard on everyone. I don't think anyone can say that the last year hasn't been something that they wish they could do over again in a different universe.
I think that's very true. And I think that the way you laid it out is everyone has had to deal with this last year. And you would think that, when we tell our grandkids about the great COVID pandemic of, 2020, it's like, it wasn't even the COVID that really was bad. It was everything that you just laid out. Like, I didn't even mention the major riots in all major cities and the burning of businesses and destruction of businesses all over the place. And then the sort of the gaslighting of, it's because the cops are bad. The whole thing has just been this big gaslighting event where you can't even say what's really happening, because then you get called out by the same people we were talking about earlier for it's really just nonsense. Well, people that commit crimes should be put in jail. People that
obey, the law and do things the right way.
Mhm.
If they want to see their dying mom in a hospital, for fuck's sake, just
Yeah.
let them see their dying mom in the hospital. Why is the government
Yeah.
in charge of telling us what to do to that extent? I don't understand it.
I got to tell you, man, we did an episode on Big Brother, the term Big Brother and the concept. And I read 1984 in full for the first time, and it was like, holy shit, like this is what's happening.
Yeah.
You're seeing one thing, and but you're being told something else, and there's certain things you can't say, and there's the thoughtful. It's crazy, man. It's scary where we are right now, but we need people to stand up to it and to not fall in line, and that's one of the reasons why we definitely wanted to have you on the show, and we're just really impressed by the fact that you are not cowing to the power, the mobs and the cancel culture and all that. So I guess my last question, and then Steve, if you have anything else before we let Mike go, is that what's the, I guess, current state of Sword and Scale, and where do you see it heading? I mean, you're still cranking out a lot of episodes in the regular feed and on Plus. Is that what we should expect to continue?
Yes, and I think we're going to add to that. I think we're going to try to bring back some shows from that we've experimented with in the past. We may do some new shows. This is all talking pretty far ahead, because we still have to figure out what to do in terms of our advertising. We're not sure yet whether we're going to work with another network or whether we're going to bring it in house. But either way, if you're going to launch new shows, you need the advertising piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. We're going to keep doing what we do right now for the foreseeable future. And Adnan did it, and Roger's not going to stop us no matter how hard she tries. So.
Well, that's a great way to leave it. For all things Mike Boudet, check out MikeBoudet.com. Also, make sure you follow the Sword and Scale socials while you can at Sword and Scale on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow Mike on Twitter at mboudet. And most importantly, subscribe to Sword and Scale wherever you listen to podcasts. But as I said before, I recommend you becoming a Plus member and listening from the app. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mike. Keep up the good fight against Kale. It's good to have someone else out there fighting with me. Thank you for listening to Origin of Species. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support our show, please become a Speakcies supporter at patreon.com/Speakcies. As a Speakcies supporter, you receive bonus content, including our new video podcast, Species Uncut. Your cost, whatever you want to pay. If you set the price, you receive all the benefits available. In addition, if you do become a Speakcies supporter, there's a strong chance Scott will come to your house and take a shower. Become a Speakcies supporter today at patreon.com/Speakcies. That's patreon.com/Speakcies. Scott will shower at your house and maybe even with you and your children.
Bob is your uncle.
Watch out for bears, and Kale is from the devil.
Speaksies.
I'm freaking rich.